instead of condemning the things such practices might lead to, he turns around and condemns those condemning this technology by casting suspicions on them as those evangelicals the Washington Post likes to categorize as poor, uneducated, and easy to command. Salitan concludes his remarks by saying, quote, "If you want permanent restrictions, your best bet is the senator who tried to impose them 2 years ago. He's the same presidential candidate now leading the charge against evolution, Sam Brownback, a Kansas Republican. He thinks we're separate from other animals, unique in the created order. Too bad this wasn't true in the past, and it won't be true in the future." End quote. If that is how the elites of the scientific establishment are coming to feel, that should give all of us hayseeds that happen to think there is something special about the human race cause for concern. For although Salitan and others like him try to make a laughingstock of those opposed to the hobo stew of species amalgamation by insinuating that, as with evolution, only buffoons oppose the process, they are approaching a truth that defenders of this technology may not want to touch. That truth is, of course, being that without evolution as an operational paradigm, as it is not an established fact at the macro level, transgenics would not be morally permissible. For if human beings are not unique in the created order, as the transgenic evolutionists who now hold sway in the halls of corporate, academic, and government research now argue, then why should human beings be granted any special rights at all? And in some circles, we probably have even fewer rights, as some of the shrill harpies in the animal rights movement who go into apoplexy over a smashed eagle's egg are often the loudest banshees for the right to hack human babies to pieces. Initially, these technologies and procedures will be marketed under the banner of medical progress, and those opposed will be castigated for their lack of sympathy for the suffering, just as those opposed to embryonic cell research were cast as being opposed to Superman ever walking again, as in the case of Christopher Reeve. Salitan writes, "We're not doing these things because they're creepy. We're doing them because they are logical. The more you humanize animals, the better they serve their purposes as lab models of humanity. That's what's scary about species mixing. It's not some crazy Frankenstein project. It's the future of medicine," end quote. However, it is not like this is where researchers will stop their work out of some reverence for the well-being of human beings made in the image of God, as this ideal has already been held up for condemnation and ridicule. As even someone as sympathetic to this research as Salitan writes, quote, "When Stanford first heard of the proposal for humanized mice brains, they were grossed out, but after thinking it over, they tentatively endorsed the idea and decided that it may not be bad to endow mice with some aspects of human consciousness or some human cognitive abilities," end quote. The British Academy and the U.S. National Academy of Sciences have likewise refused to permanently restrict the humanization of animals. Thus, once the urge to use this technology for legitimate medical applications has reached its limit, there will be little there to prevent its use just a little more, and then just a little more. After it is used to bring a handicapped or diseased person back to normal, what is to prevent it from being used to make a perfectly healthy person better beyond what a rational person steeped in Judeo-Christian morality would conclude was God's initial intentions and specifications? For example, successfully transferred neurons from an animal to help the paralyzed, all well and good. But if someone does not put a foot down somewhere, what is to prevent the Pentagon from calling up soldiers given the charge of an electric eel? Ghouls in lab coats want to create such creatures, no doubt, so they can carry out Dr. Mengele-like experiments. Salatin writes, quote, "Imagine that, a hominid brain network you can treat like a lab animal because it is a lab animal," end quote. The same thing used to no doubt be said about Jews and black folks in decades past with atrocious consequences. It is claimed in a New York Times article by Nicholas Ward titled "Chimeras on the Horizon" that, given the 20-day gestation period of a mouse compared to the nearly 9 months of a human being, it is doubtful human cognitive abilities would have time to develop. But how can anyone be absolutely certain? To this day, despite the number of books on the subject containing 5-inch words no average person could possibly pronounce, scientists and philosophers are still not sure of the exact link between the human brain and mind, this conundrum so perplexing that it is called the mind-body problem. In the Wade article, Richard Dorflinger of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops provides probably the soundest advice. He says, "If something were half human and half animal, what would our moral responsibility be? It might be immoral to kill such a creature. It's wrong to create creatures whose moral statue we are perplexed about," end quote. Many times, the unaware viewer sits back and thinks many of the things seen in science fiction could never become a reality. However, if things continue on their current pace, it won't be long until such tales join the historic chronicle of what has already transpired, rather than as a depiction of where things might be headed. This is Frederick Mann.